You, my friend, have a story, and your story matters more than you can possibly imagine that you live it well. And the reason for this is that it's connected to other stories, and therefore it has meaning. And that's because all stories ultimately are connected to one great story. And you're part of that in ways that you cannot see, and I cannot, but to come to trust it and to live it out means the world, is what gives meaning to each moment in our little lives. That's what I want to talk to you about for these few moments. There's a fabulous line, I hope I can unpack it well, and it's from J.R.R. Tolkien and his work, The Lord of the Rings. There's a scene where the heroes of the story, Sam and Frodo, are in deep darkness and tempted by great despair, and it looks like their story is going to have a very bad, meaningless ending. And then Sam is remembering other stories of great heroes in the past. And we're told, so it is, when Sam thinks of the great tales, he remembers, and this is kind of a backstory to The Lord of the Rings. As you may know with that one, there's enormous backstories that never make it into the book. We all have backstories. Our world has backstories. We stand on the shoulders of giants before us. He remembers the story of Beren and Luthien taking the Cimmeril. These were these precious gems of unspeakable life and light and beauty. If someone evil touched them, they would be destroyed. Great power, back from the foundations of the earth. Taking them from the Iron Crown of Morgoth. This is a heroic story of the rescue of that which is good. Sam says, that was a worse place and a blacker danger than ours. And then he goes on to remember the bringing of the Cimmeril to Arendelle in surprise and wonder as he says, why, it's strange that I didn't think about that before. You've got, he says to Frodo, some of that light in the star glass that the lady gave to you. Come to think of it, we're in the same tale still. It's still going on. Don't the great tales ever end? And the short answer is no. The great tales never end. That light, which is the light of the world, is part of what comes to you and comes to me and illumines people all over the place in every life, whether they know its name or they do not. And this is why your story has meaning. This is from Dallas Willard's The Divine Conspiracy, page 386. And this is why meaning is central to story. Ian Forrester has a great line. I'm not the Dallas yet, this is Forrester. He says, there's a great difference between a sequence of events and a story. So the sentence, the king died, and then the queen died, that's a string of events. The king died, and then the queen died of grief. That's a story. And now the question is, does that story have meaning? A human life, or a human world, is one that holds together in terms of the future. It essentially involves meaning. Meaning is not a luxury for us, not for you today. It is a kind of spiritual oxygen that enables our souls to live. It is a going beyond, a transcendence of whatever state we're in toward that which completes it. The meaning of present events in human life is largely a matter of what comes later. So we don't see it yet. We don't know it yet. Thus, anything that has no future is meaningless in the human order. That's why we try to avoid it as much as possible. This life structure, meaning in a larger context, going beyond a string of events, is mirrored in language where meaning and meaningfulness most clearly display themselves. So, for example, if we hear a single word, we don't yet know what it means until we can find its context. The larger context tells us its meaning. A teacher would say to me, put the date on the test, then the word date was a noun. My friend Rick would say, let's go get a date shake, then date is an adjective. Girls would say to me, no, I don't want to date you, let's just befriend. And then it was a verb, the verb of death, very familiar to me. Dallas goes on. Events in a human life are like that. And so is a human life as a whole, as well as human life itself. These events resemble the opening words in an unfinished sentence, paragraph, chapter, or book. In a sense, we can identify them and grasp them, but we cannot know what they mean and really are until we know what comes later. Thus, we are always seeking the meaning of events we live through and of our lives themselves. We wonder about the meaning of historical events and people, or even human history. And it is always true that meaning is found when it is found in some larger context, not a random sequence of events. Now, from Jesus, we learn of the ultimate context, God and his kingdom. In the future phases of that kingdom lies the meaning of our lives, and indeed the history of the earth, of which we are a part. There is a great story going on, and your life has meaning, whether you want it to or not, because inevitably, your story is a part of more stories. You and I are dependent upon and grateful for others who came before us and gave to us and wrestled and struggled and failed, and then there are other people coming along behind us, and our stories all impact each other. And therefore, whatever happens to you has meaning. And particularly when you suffer, when your story doesn't turn out the way that you wanted to, that also, our sufferings have meaning. And that's why in the story of Jesus, in the story of the Bible, at the center of it all is a cross. Part of what the cross is saying is that not just the death of Jesus and his suffering, but he was taking all human suffering upon us. And therefore, all human suffering, what you're going through right now, what you have lost, what you are grieving, that person you're having to care for, that difficulty that nobody sees, that's part of a greater story. So don't you give up. Find the meaning in it. I was at a worship event quite recently, and it was amazing music and remarkable enthusiasm. There are tons of people there. And then this guy got up and he said, a lot of you just see miracles all the time. A lot of you are from Pentecostal backgrounds. You get miracles every day. I grew up to Baptist. Then he said, I've never seen a miracle. And the room got real quiet. He's just being dead honest. I've struggled with doubt my whole life long. I don't pray for dead people and have them get raised. When I pray for them, they stay dead. In fact, when I pray for people that are alive and sick, they die. You could form a line right now, and if you want to go home today, you'll be home before this meeting's done if I pray for you. And then he talked about how somebody had written a song for him, and he sang this song about God's patience with people who struggle with doubt. And he talked about doubting Thomas and how, when Jesus was resurrected, Mary came to him and he said to Mary, don't touch me, don't cling to me. But with Thomas, Thomas slept in on the resurrection, so Jesus has to make a return appearance. And he says to Thomas, I want you to touch me. And somehow, through his doubt, doubting Thomas has blessed people like me. Viktor Frankl, in his classic book, Man's Search for Meaning, Freud said at the heart of the human condition is a will to pleasure, desire for pleasure. Alfred Adler came along and he said, no, at the heart of this is what he called will for power, agency. Frankl said, no, it's will for meaning. We can bear any how almost, as long as we have a why. And he talked about a man who came up to him whose wife had died a few years earlier, and he was in deep despair, wanted to end his own life. And instead of trying to encourage him not to, Frankl just asked him, what would have happened to your wife if you'd have died first? And he said, it would have been terrible. She couldn't have borne it. And Frankl said, do you understand that your suffering, you're going through grief now, is a kind of a gift to her, because it means that you're bearing that burden, not her. You are sparing her that grief. And the man stood up and shook Frankl's hand, walked out of the office. Okay, there's a reason I can go on. In very, very hard moments of my own life, when it was tempting to think this is just a sequence of meaningless events, the thought, I cannot fix my story, but meaning is still available. That would keep me, you're part of a great story. I'll leave you with these words from Hebrews chapter 12. After walking through one story after another story after another story of great ones who have gone before us, who were commended for their faith, but none of them received what had been promised. None of them had their stories end the way they wanted them to. Since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, that larger story, he endured the cross, scorning its shame. So today, connect your story with somebody else. Find a way out of your grief or your sorrow or something that you have learned or something that you have been given by God to intersect the story of another person and bless them in just a little way. Or even if you can't find a way to do that, to bless God today, to look at the world and really notice it and say, thank you, God, that you made it and that you are going to redeem it. Everybody has a story. Make your story great.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any future teachings from John Ortberg here at Become New. My name's Tim, and I'm a part of the team here. This series is all about stories. Everybody has a story, and everybody's story matters. And we want to know about your story, whether it's a story of coming to faith or a story of spiritual growth. Whatever it is, we're here for you. You can email that to us at connect@becomenew.com, or you can text it to us. You can also sign up for daily reminders whenever we drop a new video via text by texting the word BECOME to the number 855-888-0444. You can also send us prayer requests there. There's a team of us that meet to pray each weekday for viewers just like yourself. If you'd like to receive the emails that go along with each video, be sure to check that out at becomenew.com/subscribe. More than a video to watch, this is really a community to belong to, and we're so glad that you're a part of it. We'll catch you next time.